Okay, so I do have the white paper set up. I'm going to go this without my glasses. I'll probably have a headache, but that's all right. Let's start in at page 238. The bedroom door opened softly, and Banks was standing there in burgundy pajamas and matching robe belted at his waist. His dark hair was tousled as if he hadn't slept much either. "Is he okay?" he asked gently. "Nightmares," she said. He grimaced. A door opened down the hall, and Brenda came into the room a minute later, wearing a gown and thick Chanel robe. "Is everything okay?" she asked. "Gosh, I'm sorry I woke everybody up," Tad said with tears streaming down his cheeks. "Come on," Banks said. He moved Clancy to one side, picked up Tad, and carried him into the living room. "How about a glass of milk?" "Thanks, that would be nice," Tad said, still choking from tears. "Chamomile tea?" Brenda asked Clancy. "It's the only thing that I can really make well, and it helps me to sleep. It might help you, too." Banks glanced up at her with Tad in his lap. "Coffee black, double strong. Put a horseshoe in it, and if it floats, make it stronger." Brenda rolled her eyes and laughed. She and Clancy waited for the water to boil and the coffee to make. Brenda found a wooden tray to put everything on, and Tad was talking to Banks about his nightmare. Brenda came back into the kitchen and pushed the door shut just a little. "What happened to Tad?" she asked softly. When Tad was 3 years old, Morris was playing a video game, and Tad interrupted him, crying. Morris picked up a steel shovel by the fireplace and hit him with it several times. She swallowed hard. "I ran and got in the way, and Morris hit me, too. I had 2 broken ribs. Tad had the concussion. Morris was arrested, tried, and convicted, and sentenced to 6 years in prison, although he got out in 5." "Oh, my goodness, how terrible," Brenda said with genuine sympathy. "I hope maybe Morris might not want to come back here, but he wants to get even with me for putting him away," she said sadly. "I'm not worried about me, but Tad would have to go into foster care." "He would not," Brenda said firmly. "But you stop thinking like that. Morris is not taking you out. If he tries to, he'll think he walked into a prickly pear cactus. My brother will have him roasted." That was page 238, 239, 240. Clancy managed a smile. "Your brother's a kind man," she said quietly. "He has a soft heart. It just doesn't show." She drew in a long breath. "Grace has him tied in knots," she muttered. "She wants him to take an administrative position and give up raising cattle and living on a ranch." She made a face and shook her head. "He's been hung up on her for years, but she's changed. She's not the same woman that he remembers from Euston." "She seems very nice," Clancy said. "She is nice, but she's also involved in her work, and that nothing else matters to her. If you want to know what I think she'll never get married. She has that job that makes her feel useful and gives her a purpose in life. She finds things wrong with men around her to keep them from getting serious." She glanced through the door to make sure her brother was still talking to Tad. She turned back to Grace. She'd already been she already talked Mike Johns, her fiance, out of giving up police work and anything to do with guns. He wasn't happy about it. I'm not sure she would have ever married him. She was already very involved with church work. Colt said that they had a nasty fight the day before Mike was killed about his job. "That's so sad." "It would be even sadder if she ended up with my brother," Brenda said flatly. "You can see how unsettled he is already by her. She hates his job. She hates cattle. She hates ranching. She hates guns. But it's all just excuses. Her heart's where she left it, in the work she was doing in South America. No man in the world is ever going to be able to replace it. Colt hasn't figured that out yet. I hope he will before he lets it ruin his life." Clancy didn't know what to say, which was just as well, because Tad came running into the kitchen to see if his milk was ready. Miss Kitty and Kitten were right beside him. "It's a parade," Clancy teased, smiling at her little brother. "Aren't they cute?" he exclaimed. "Mr. Banks says that the kitten can stay here while I can come visit Miss Kitty whenever I want." "That's kind of you," Clancy said softly. He grinned at her. "I'm very kind," he pointed out. "Not that you ever notice it. Nasturism," he added deliberately. Page 240 and 241. "I am not a Nasturism," Clancy said belligerently. "A likely story," he returned. "What's a Nastur?" Tad asked. "Nasturism," Banks told him, as he reached for the coffee pot and poured himself a cup. "It's a flower." "That's what Clancy names means," Tad said. "Her whole name is Calianthe," he added. "It's Greek. It means a pretty flower." Banks looked up surprised, and Clancy flushed. "It sounds like Clancy with a lisp." Tad chuckled. It suits her, Banks said after a minute, and his black eyes were quiet and intense as they met hers. I'm not pretty, Clancy said gruffly. She got up abruptly. Is the tea ready? She added nervously. I'll take mine back to bed with me, if that's okay. Of course it's okay, Brenda said, smiling. Here, do you want any sugar in it? No, thanks. I like it plain. Tad ready to go back to bed? You bet. He looked up at Banks. Is it okay if Miss Kitty and the kitten stay in my room? Banks chuckled. Sure, I won't have nightmares if the kitties stay with me. I know I won't, he added. Just leave the door into the hall cracked so they can get into their facilities if they need to, Banks added. Facility? Tad was struggling. The litter box, Banks whispered loudly. Oh, Tad chuckled. Okay, I will. Good night. Sorry I woke everybody up. He ran down the hall with the cats pacing after him. He's a good kid, Banks told Clancy. You've done a great job with him. Thanks, I've done my best. Brenda patted her on the shoulder. He really is a good kid, but I have to get back to sleep. I don't have to get up early, but I'll need to get him some breakfast before he leaves. I can cook, he said shortly. He studied Clancy, but those biscuits were pretty good. I haven't had a biscuit like that since our mother was alive. She felt a glow all over. I couldn't get up and cook you something if you wanted me to, she added, in case she sounded too forward. I'd like that if you don't mind, he said in a husky, deep tone. I'd like that too, because I can't sleep late, Brenda laughed. Good night then, Colt. You'll turn off the coffee pot? Sure, good night. They called good night, but neither of them moved. That was 240, 241, 242, 243. Moving to the next paperclip. It's a short one. Page 249. She's frail for all her fierceness, Brenda replied. Morris must have been a horror to live with. She and Tad had a challenging life. It's going to get better from here on out. Do you have plans for Thanksgiving? She shook her head. You can come down here, he said in a rough breath. I'll have to invite Hollister. If I don't, they'll feel obliged to go over to his place for it because they promised. You just said he was nice. Well, he is nice as long as he thinks of naturism in there as his little sister, he added, and he wasn't smiling. Brenda didn't laugh until she was in her room with the door closed. That was page 249. Page 251. Morris sighed. Colt, we can't. What did you just call me? He asked softly. She went red. Oh, sorry, I love it, he replied solemnly. That's the first time you ever called me anything but mister. You don't mind? She added breathlessly, drowning in his black eyes. I don't mind, he reassured her. She smiled. Okay. So what were you saying about Morris? He asked, finishing his eggs and part of a biscuit. I have to go back to work Monday, she said miserably, and Tad has to go back to school. We can't stay away forever. Page 252. I'm getting that covered, he said with a smile. Things will be in place Monday, trust me. I do, she said, with all my heart. His own heart lifted. He loved the way she looked at him. Her eyes were expressive as the pretty face he grinned. Tomorrow we're all going riding, he added. She grinned. I'll try not to fall off, he chuckled. If you do, honey, I'll catch you, promise. She beamed at that word, and it made her feel all warm all over. It filled her with empty places inside her. He was feeling something similar in the middle of the fervent exchange of eyes. His cell phone went off. He grimaced as he saw the number displayed. He answered it. Hello, Grace, he said, but not in any affectionate way. Clancy started moving empty plates off the table to the sink. Her heart sank. She overheard what he was saying to the woman who had first place in his heart. Had she totally mistaken his feelings? Was he just missing Grace and Clancy was handy? No, I'm sorry, he said, his eyes on Clancy's stiff spine. Yes, I know it's important to you, but we have guests and we're taking them riding tomorrow. Another time, perhaps. Yes, I know that you leave soon. I'll try to make time for that lunch one day. How about that? There was a pause. He grimaced. Grace, there's nothing wrong with the way Brenda dresses, and I'll remind you that she goes to church every Sunday. Well, you're entitled to your own opinion. Just don't expect me to share it. Yes? Fine. I'll see you. He hung up. His expression was thunderous. Clancy understood once. Brenda has pretty legs, she said shortly, and if she wants to show them off, it doesn't make her a prostitute, she added curtly. He laughed softly, and his bad mood dissipating. You're a tonic, honey. I was just getting irritable. You make everything so easy. She smiled. I love Brenda, she said. She's been very kind to me. She loves you, too, came a mischievous voice from behind them, and Brenda came in, hair tousled, robe fastened over long blue pajamas, yawning. Oh, boy. Food, and I didn't have to cook it. Clancy, you're a wonder. Clancy laughed. I love to cook. Was that Grace on the phone? Brenda asked her brother as she sat down and filled a plate. He made a face. It was. He fastened his shirt. She has some of the most rigid beliefs, he added on a sigh. She loves her work, Clancy said simply. It's more important to her than anything else. She feels needed. She sighed. I think she sabotages relationships so that she can keep doing what she wants to do with her life. Coulter and Brenda exchanged amused looks. She's very nice, Clancy added nervously. So are you, pet. Brenda replied gently. You look right at home in the kitchen. Thanks, she smiled gently. I love it here. Yes, poor oppressed milk cows and all, Brenda teased. They all laughed. Page 251, 252, 253. Here comes 254 and 255. His phone rang again. He pulled it out, scowled. Banks, he said abruptly. He listened and made a face, glancing worriedly at Clancy. Yes, I'll be there right away. Are they badly injured? Thank God, I'm on my way. He hung up. It's the Martins, he said, anticipating Clancy's anxious expression. She'd gone to church with them for years. They were elderly, and Mr. Martin was crippled. Someone roughed them up trying to find you and Tad. Morris, Clancy said miserably. It had to be Morris. Oh, the poor things. They've been so nice to us, she choked on tears. Will they be all right? And what if Morris comes back? He put his big hands on her shoulders. I'll handle it, he said softly. It was all he had to say. She looked up at him through a faint mist, but with perfect trust. Okay, she replied. Brenda, watching them, had to hide a smile. They were already like two halves of a whole. Not that she didn't share Clancy's concern for the Martins, who went to church with them. They were kind people. Are you going in today, Coulter asked Brenda. No, I have got the day off. Miles is in the bunkhouse. Billings is in position some damn where, and he won't say where, with a sniper rifle. We're pretty much covered here, but you can call the sheriff, Hayes Carson, if anything happens while I'm gone, he added grimly. We'll be all right, Brenda said quietly. I promise we will. Okay, he looked down at Clancy, bent with a smile, and kissed her tenderly. I'll see you later. Clancy flushed. It was the first time he kissed her right in front of his sister. It was, in fact, a statement of intent, and that she totally missed, and just smiled. Okay. He chuckled and called a quick goodbye to his sister and went out the door. Gosh, that was all Clancy could manage. Gosh, indeed, Brenda laughed. And here I've been worried to death that Grace was going to get her sweet hooks into him and remake him into Mike Johns. She turned from the sink where she was soaking the dirty dishes. Mike Johns? She asked. Grace's fiancé. She turned his life upside down. He was killed off duty in a bank robbery. He was a Houston police officer. Grace was trying to get him away from his job that he loved, and she just didn't approve of guns. She already started on Colt the minute she got back into town. She smiled gently. I'm sorry you got sick, Clancy, but I'm very glad at the same time. Grace was the last thing he needed. He was stuck in the past with her. You brought him into the present when he had to take you to the hospital and then look after you and Tad. He's very masculine, Clancy said, and very nice. I think so, Brenda laughed, although I have to admit to some prejudice. Page 254, 255. She poured herself another cup of coffee, warmed Brenda's, and sat down at the table. I hope the Martins aren't badly hurt, she said worriedly. I'm really fond of them, and so is Tad. Brenda put a gentle hand over hers. They've been good to you, and I love them too. They'll be all right, and Morris will trip himself up sooner or later. He can't get to you, so he may try to get to the assistant DA. That will be the biggest mistake of his life. Yes, it will, because all that will involve Cal Hollister, and he has some really shady friends, she added on a laugh. You're very fond of him, Brenda noted. Very fond. When I worked for him, he sort of adopted me and Tad. He's like my big brother I never had. Colt's jealous, you know, of him. Did you know? She grinned helplessly. I noticed. She sighed. I was jealous of Grace. I mean, she's a really good person, lots better than me. I was afraid he was going to marry her. So was I, Brenda confessed. But I don't think that's going to be a concern ever again, she added with a wicked smile at Clancy. Clancy was glowing with feelings and just laughed. That was page 256. Moving forward. 259. Why did Duffy and his friends attack the Martins? Marquez asked. Because Duffy's trying to locate his stepbrother, as well as his stepsister, whose testimony put him in jail for 5 years, he said simply. He's also a suspect in the disappearance of his stepsister's grandfather, Dalton Reed, 5 years ago. They're Clancy's relatives, Marquez said, making the connection. Are she and her little brother safe? He nodded. They're staying at my ranch with me. Morris won't get them within binocular distance, even if he finds out where they are. I've got Chet Billings somewhere on the property with a sniper kit. Marquez let out a whistle. Billings was up here with Rourke during a similar case, helping protect a vet's assistant, Cappy Drake, from Jacobsville, whose brother was assaulted by her former boyfriend. The perp threatened Cappy, too. You might know her. She married to Dr. Bentel Rydell. This is 259, 260, and 261. Miss Kitty, my cat is Bentley's patient, he said with a grin. I know Cappy. Her brother recovered nicely from the assault, even managed to walk again after surgery. He's a tactic expert in a group of international mercs headed by a man named Bojo. They're good people. So I heard. I remember Billings, however, smokes like a furnace. I would have to ask him not to, but a lot of high buildings overlook my living room in the window, he added with a chuckle. He does have a bit of an attitude problem. Expert marksman, however. Indeed, what about the Martins? I asked the local U.S. Marshal Office for help. The Martins are potential witnesses in a murder case. Morris, Duffy, was apparently the last person to see Dalton Reed alive. The man had an antique Colt .45 and an equal antique holster worth a lot of money for its history alone. The gun went missing along with its owner. I think the Martins may be able to help pinpoint some of the connections. They've known Clancy and Tad for years. I don't want them to go missing. Neither do I. Are they going to be staying at their own house? They'll have to. Mr. Martin is in no condition to travel. The marshals are sending an agent to stay with them. Give me the address, Marquez said, reaching for the notepad app on his cell phone. I'll put it on extra patrols as well. Thanks for the help. Oh, it will help me too. Daryl Charlie wants Morris really bad after the death threats he's made. Since Daryl is running for the DA in the next election, he's going to use the case as his platform. He pursed his lips and smiled. Not a bad idea. It might help us. Indeed it might. He checked his watch. I've got to go report to my boss and tell him what's going on. I had Clancy and Tad stay at the ranch today, so I'll have to handle the office myself. Just put a big sign on your door that reads, out to lunch, and don't go back. Wasn't it you who came up with that idea about traffic improvement? Coulter asked suspiciously. It was, Marquez agreed. I just suggested we make all the roads and streets one way, only leading out of town, he smiled. Coulter just shook his head and laughed. 259, 260, 261. And here comes 263. He stopped by his superior's office to tell him what was going on with Clancy and made sure that she was excused from work for the day without any penalty. He also outlined the case concerning Morris and his assault on the Martins, who could identify the missing gun and the gun belt, and who might have other informants about Clancy's grandfather's sudden disappearance. Then he went to his own office and phoned Marissa Kirk. Hello, Mr. Banks, she said in a soft, gentle voice. How can I help you? He drew in a breath. He hadn't told her his name. He just asked for her, and another woman had called her to the phone. I have a missing man, he began. Yes, she interrupted, her voice changing slightly. Dalton Reed. He was a sheriff deputy until he retired. He disappeared 5 years ago. There's a young man. The deputy has a stepsister's grandfather. Oh, the young man did terrible things to his stepsister and stepbrother. He went to prison? Yes, he returned spellbound. There's a deserted church. He hates churches. That's why he chose this one. It sets off the road between San Antonio and that little town Tank went to when he was being stalked by the killer. What was it called? Jacobsville? Yes, that's it. It's in a grove of pecan trees. There's a crooked log fence and an old well that sits in front of the burned-down house and on its way to the church. The gun and the gun belt are there, but he wants to sell them. He thinks it's safe now, so long from the crime. The old poor man's body is there underneath the boards near the altar. She stopped and sighed heavily. I'm sorry, that's all I have. It comes and goes. That's more than I had, much more. I can't thank you enough. You're more than welcome, and congratulations. Excuse me? There was a smile in her voice. She's very sweet, your assistant, and she loves you very much. She does. There was a catch in his voice. Oh, yes, but watch out for her, she added. There's something I can't see. What? And keep close to her. I'll do that, thanks. Oh, and that man that you have been watching her, the one with a rifle, I'm so sorry. He's going to have to use it. The desperate men do desperate things. He's already said that he's not going back to jail. When you find the body, he'll know that it's all over for him, but your sharpshooter will not miss. Mrs. Kirk, you are a witch, she teased and laughed wholeheartedly. Yes, but I'm a good witch, and I don't curdle milk. I would never have accused you of it if I was drinking buttermilk right now. She laughed again, delighted. If I think of anything else that might help, I'll phone you, if I may. You most certainly may. One last thing, he added quickly. There are 2 elderly people, the Martins. He won't bother them again. There's a federal agent with them. He's very imposing, she said. Honestly, if I were a career criminal, I would think twice about going into the same room with him, even armed. They'll be fine. He laughed. I'm reassured now. Thanks again. It's no problem at all. That's 263, 264, 265. We're really moving tonight, aren't we? Okay, here's 272 and 273. Clancy was still chewing on a fingernail. She wanted more than anything to go to the church, but that was the insane. She could walk into an ambush herself, be taken captive by Morse and used to put Coulter in danger. She couldn't bear the thought of anything happening to him. Brenda put an arm around her. It's all going to be all right, trust me. She looked up at the other woman. The light would go out of this world, she began and swallowed hard. Tears threatened. Sometimes all we have is faith, Brenda reminded her. Clancy took a deep breath, yes, and felt herself calming. He won't get hurt, will he? Tad asked, joining them. Clancy wrapped him up tight. He won't get hurt, she said, with more conviction than she felt. And that is the white page. So that means we got some more book review tomorrow. And I work tomorrow. So you'll get it after tomorrow's work. You won't get it tonight. But that'll give you something to look forward to. Will we finish it tomorrow so we can start the next book? Well, to find that question out, you have to watch. I'll section it off like I always do right when I finish this video. Surprisingly enough, I got it done just in time to go watch the Married at First Sight Australia reunion and wrap some gifts. Woof! So much fun. Love each and every one of you. Thank you for watching. Make sure that you're keeping your social distance. Make sure you're washing your hands. When you're not washing your hands, make sure that you're using your hand sanitizer. And always wear your mask. God bless. Stay safe. Stay well.